Hi, I'm Kieren.
And I'm Riku.
And welcome to Artificially Ever After
Short Stuff.
Okay, what are we talking about today, Riku?
So we're going to be answering the question, is big tech controlling warfare?
Wow.
And we often talk about using AI in our lives. So this might be for our jobs or for creativity. Mm-hmm. But would you still use it if your data is being used to develop warfare technology?
Wow.
So recently, the line between the apps on our phones and the technology on the battlefield are really starting to blur in a big way.
Yeah.
So Kieren, what just happened?
Yeah, well, there was a recent news article which kind of piqued interest in this area again. It's been a contention with big tech and military for many years. But just last month, OpenAI, so the creators of ChatGPT, they secured their first ever major military contract with the Pentagon in the United States. And it was a $200 million program with the Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Office, the CDAO. And it was basically to, just quoting them here, to develop prototype frontier AI capabilities to address critical national security challenges in both warfighting and enterprise domains. And it's just crucial to emphasize that this kind of amount of money as well is no longer in the realms of just a small sort of test. This is kind of a big, large-scale contract that will have significant impact on military capabilities. And the reason why it's important and we need to kind of look a bit more into this is that this has happened as a result of OpenAI kind of very quietly, and last year they removed their ban on using their technology and their AI and their chatbots for warfare and other military applications. And then by the end of 2024, they'd partnered with some key military companies. So Anduril, which you may be familiar with, who develop military technologies, had partnered with OpenAI to utilize their LLMs, their chatbot technology in warfare.
So I guess the take-home message here is that when we use tools like ChatGPT, it actually connects us to their priorities and political ideology. On top of this as well, we have to critique our trust in these companies, and I'm not sure if they hold on to their promises, just like what you mentioned earlier with OpenAI. So, Kieren, have you found anything else out?
Yeah, well, like you were saying, the picture goes much bigger than this, and this OpenAI deal is scarily just the tip of the iceberg, which is why we've thought to do this episode and titled it as such, is big tech controlling warfare, because a lot of these companies are now partnering with government bodies around the world, but specifically because we're talking about the likes of Meta and OpenAI and some of the other ones, we're talking today largely about what's happening in the United States. So people are actually calling this great recoupling between industry and Silicon Valley and these big tech companies and military establishments, whereas previously we would see them very much distance themselves and there'd be a kind of culture with separating themselves from military applications. We're seeing this completely flip. So if we just go back to even just 2018, there were big protests at Google headquarters in response to their partnership with the government around what was known as Project Maven. And this was a government contract to use Google's machine learning software and specifically their computer vision software, which is where AI can understand images and videos to distinguish people and objects in drone videos and literally costing people their lives. So understandably, a lot of Google employees kicked up a fuss. There were people that resigned. There were 4,000 employees who signed a petition against this because they saw at the time, you kind of opened Pandora's box with that Project Maven. So they very much saw it as a first step towards using AI for lethal purposes and wanted to kind of keep that in the box. But the project did go ahead. They did then revert that and stop any further progress. I think it was a year or two later. However, after that protest at Google and that they shut down Project Maven, they've now done a 180-degree turn again, and they are kind of opening back up to the prospects of using their technology and their AI within military and within government. So I think the key takeaway from that is that while these companies often depict themselves as having very strong ethical and philosophical kind of boundaries and precedents, they are by no means fixed. And often when there's money involved and politics, those philosophies and those ethical compasses can shift. And we've actually seen that just at the start of this year with Google, when Alphabet, the parent company, completely rewrote its guidelines on how it will use AI, and they dropped a section which previously ruled out applications that were, quote, likely to cause harm. And they're now collaborating with Lockheed Martin, which is a huge defense company. They make warfighters and fighter jets and things. And we've seen this across lots of other companies now. So Meta also changed its policies on the use of its Llama LLM chatbot models at the end of 2024 that can now be used for military. And the same with Anthropic, which was founded as the safety first AI company, ironically now has partnered with Palantir, another huge defense company, at the end of 2022. Amazon and Microsoft, they're a little bit out of this category because for a number of years now we've known that they have had infrastructure in place that supported government and defense. But just this week, actually, on Monday, Elon Musk's AI company xAI announced Grok for government, which is again similar to this OpenAI contract where they have their technology that goes into the things like ChatGPT and Grok on X, and they're now being allowed to be used by the government and military.
Wow, so that's literally like the 4 biggest players in the AI game are just having these collaborations with public.
And well, whilst they changed their policies, we've now just seen, again, at the start of this week, a lot's been happening this week. The Department of Defense in America said that it's granting contract awards of up to $200 million to all of these companies for developing AI technology.
Oh, wow. So that's the same amount of money they already gave to OpenAI.
Yep, and they're just keeping it on coming. So that's kind of one of the problems right there, is that we don't know exactly what the technological capabilities are that are being developed here, and that the use cases of these AI chatbots. And obviously, there's going to be national security involved, and they won't be able to disclose everything. But these are companies within the free market that we kind of help fund and operate with, and therefore have public involvement. It's not just kind of government money and government spending. This is very much kind of these companies sitting on the fence between public and government institutions. And a lot is happening now without public awareness and understanding. And it's being framed as this kind of new patriotism whereby these companies have to change their policies and they have to start allowing their technology to be used for defense out of some sort of patriotic duty, which, may or may not be true. Obviously, the kind of geopolitical tensions are very high right now. There's a lot of wars going on. There's tension in the East about taking over Taiwan. So there is incentive to develop a lot of this technology, but the issue is that the public aren't at all involved, and there are still lots of problems with these technologies. So do you want to touch a little bit more on why this is all happening now and why there's concern?
Yeah, well, I think one of the biggest drivers for this is actually the competition between US and China.
Yeah.
And this is often framed as the AI Cold War. And just to give a bit of a background, in China, their strategy is more centered on the government. So the government are really controlling where a lot of the funding goes for certain innovative initiatives.
Yeah.
And they actually have the military civil fusion, the MCF strategy.
Sounds very movie-like.
Yeah, and so this was actually integrated in 2017, and this ensures that commercial AI breakthroughs can be rapidly adopted for defense and military purposes.
Okay.
So it's essentially what this podcast is all about.
Yeah.
And China have been starting this movement for nearly 8 years now.
Oh, wow.
So on top of this, the Chinese Communist Party, so they're the ones in power right now, are developing the People's Liberation Army, and they want them to be a world-class military by 2049. So pretty soon, it's around the corner, and I think both of these initiatives are putting a lot of pressure on the US. So the Pentagon feel like they have to keep up.
Yeah.
And whilst the China and US have the same goal, they're in the same race, there's a big difference when it comes to the US.
Yeah, so their hand has been forced almost to some extent.
Yes, exactly, because historically in the US, the military research used to trickle down to consumers. So I don't know if you've heard of ARPANET before, but that was like the precursor to the internet that we use today.
Yeah.
Things like GPS technology was actually originally from the military. Now it's fueling our like Google Maps when you're trying to go around the city.
Yeah, this is where we should probably quickly point listeners to our AI and warfare long form episode, which we did, where we covered a lot of these things and how historically the technologies that have been developed through military spending and government initiatives. So yeah, if you want to find out more about this history and also about what AI is actually being used for in warfare, you should go listen and check out our long form episode.
Yeah, please do. So Yeah, we're seeing that in the past, the private sector used to piggyback off the public sector. But now things are very flipped. And the way this all comes together is a 3-tiered system. So with these AI models, you typically have like a data center, you have the AI model itself, and then you might have some company that puts all this together and makes an actual piece of technology or software that can be used in warfare.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing is that the core infrastructure that the US government have access to are actually owned by Amazon and Microsoft.
Yeah. So these big data centers, right?
Yeah. So you hear of AWS or Azure, these data centers. So this is where the data of these AI models is handled.
The cloud.
Yeah, the cloud, yeah. And then you have the brain. So you can think of your OpenAIs, your Googles. They're making the chatbots, so these language models that are able to think intelligently,
right,
do lots of processing. And then you have the effectors. So these are your andurils, your andrils. And they focus on autonomous systems and artificial intelligence. So
right.
all
so
three of these layers. Yeah, exactly. Leveraging that brain. So what we're seeing is that all 3 layers of the infrastructure the government have access to are all privately owned. So it's not like they own their own
huge data center, do they?
part of these things. So if we think if any of these companies go down, literally the US's military will go down.
Yeah, that's crazy.
With their AI technology. So
and you know the defense is almost then subject to the free market and kind of the share price and everything that comes along with publicly traded companies.
Exactly. And then if we think a bit more deeply about this as well, this actually means for AI regulation, the US is actually kind of boxing themselves off because now they're so dependent on the private sector technology.
Yeah.
It means that they're not really going to be incentivized to put strict regulations on AI. We talk a lot about the worries of rapid AI development.
Yeah.
And so many people calling for regulation. It's like, we need to slow down and actually make sure this technology is safe, given that it's in everyone's pocket right now.
Yeah, when you've got the pressure and anxiety looming over you from another superpower country who's potentially going to invade your territory, you're not exactly going to focus on slowing things down to make sure every last detail is safely developed, are you?
They're probably not going to put these strict regulations in that we might need.
Yeah, that is scary.
So the key takeaway is that the US government's kind of put themselves in a situation where they're forced to let the free market control and develop the tools that they're using. And now the tools that you're using on your phone are actually massively connected to military technology.
Right. So, I mean, I guess the advantages of using AI in warfare, as we discussed in that long form episode, are somewhat clear that, we can make ourselves safer and hopefully let fewer humans out on the battlefield and have fewer lives taken as a result of warfare. This is the kind of narrative that these CEOs of these companies like Palantir and Anduril are preaching to everyone. However, there is a very important point that there are sort of profound risks that may be involved with this technology, especially when the development of that technology trickles out into publicly available products and things like ChatGPT. So some just really obvious ones off the bat, which we've been preaching about since episode 1, I think, on this show, that hallucinations and bias, like the ability for these models and chatbots to lie to you, essentially, give you incorrect information and communicate in a way that sounds very true. These are still very clear problems. They have got better over time, but they still exist. We've seen crazy stories just from the other week when we had some of the latest Grok models going on X and pretending to be Adolf Hitler and referring to itself as Mecha Hitler and making anti-Semitic comments. So these crazy stories that should not be happening with publicly available tools that are very much still being jailbroken and have these flaws. Now, obviously, that is an awful outcome from these models, but imagine when real human lives are at stake.
Yeah, I mean, Grok's now government AI for government,
exactly,
right?
Yeah, right. So there's a huge double-edged sword with these products that, the rapid development without kind of the necessary safety procedures in one domain can result in something unsafe for a completely different application. So we should have completely different regulations and frameworks for development for different use cases.
Yeah, and another really important point is the erosion of democratic power as we rely on these AI models more. So when these models replace human jobs in these critical areas, it just reduces the ability for the public to influence decisions.
Yeah.
And in particular through strikes, an AI model isn't going to go on strike. It's not going to tell you this war is unjust, we probably shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
If the commander wants to do it and they ask the AI to do things, the AI will do those things.
That's a really good point. And I guess also just even if we decide to go ahead with the decision, at least with humans involved, we could have a sort of very large and diverse set of ideas and thoughts that we can then come to some sort of consensus. Whereas if you're just using kind of a singular AI model, or even multiple AI models that now have very similar worldviews because they're trained on the same data, you're not going to get much of a diversity of options or thoughts, are you?
Exactly. We're seeing the decisions getting concentrated, and fewer people will be making bigger decisions.
Yeah, and that's on the kind of bias side of things as well, isn't it? So, yeah, so I think that we need to be pushing as a public for more transparency, both around the sort of deals which are being made, who is holding responsibility and who's accountable for these outcomes, and importantly, if we can even push back on whether the technology we're using on a day-to-day basis like ChatGPT is actually helping to develop technology that's then going to be directly used in military and in warfare as well. So just to quote a former OpenAI researcher, Miles Brundage, he made a post on X saying that AI companies should be more transparent about which national security use cases they do and don't support. And we can even see from some very recent kind of preliminary surveys on the public that they are pushing for more transparency. So there was a survey done in the UK that found that 80% of people asked felt that these new technologies needed to be more regulated to protect people's rights and freedoms. So we need a lot more transparency from these companies, and we need it now.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the public know we're in a very uncomfortable position.
Yeah.
There's so many factors going on here. So how do we wrap this up? Like, what is the path moving forwards?
So I think first up is that we just need very clear rules that these companies and government kind of need to abide by. You know, like we were just discussing then, if there's an incentive to move quickly and not focus as heavily on safeguarding these tools, we need to very clearly define and agree on what that sort of threshold should be and what the public feel comfortable with. And we need very clear accountability, again, to that other point we were saying. So we can't just rely on their promises that they're doing it for the good of the country and as their patriotic duty. We need to have them be accountable for the outcomes of their technology. And we need both government and the companies to be very clear about what the changes are as a result of now using these very advanced and new AI technologies. And lastly, which is kind of plugging ourselves a little bit here with the podcast, we need AI literacy within the general public. So if we're going to hope to ask these questions to our government and to these companies, we need to know what we're asking for and why there are kind of specific nuanced risks at play here and what the potential outcomes might be. So yeah, we really need to know how you as the public and the listener feels and start this conversation about AI use in military and warfare. So, you know, does it change how you feel knowing that the tool you go online to use maybe every day, every week, ChatGPT, now this line is being blurred and that technology, you might be helping train it for a military application? And does the very strong connection now between these companies, these tech companies and politics, you know, does that change how you feel about using the tools? Because I know after doing this research, I think I'm going to think a lot differently and pick my chatbot accordingly, I think, from now on.
Yeah, it's definitely got me thinking. So please get in touch at contact@artificialeverafter. And I guess we'll wrap up. And I think just have a few thoughts here. So I think the cat's out of the bag now that these big AI companies are just completely interconnected with the military and politics.
Yeah.
And we have to remember that AI is not just a tool. I think that's often said. It's really a force that concentrates power, automates these huge decisions that decide who lives, it completely reshapes our society. And without public understanding, that power becomes unaccountable.
Yeah.
So let's vote with our feet and let us know how you feel.
Sounds like a plan.
So thank you so much for listening.
And we'll catch you next time.